way you can look like that in your 40s.
Liver King here. I got 1 pound of delicious raw liver right in front of me because liver is king. Here we go. My intestines are shattered. I do enemas every day to take a shit. I have to lay down on the ground with the fetal position with my legs to the left to actually go to the bathroom.
A jacked up man with a caveman beard and muscles that look straight up photoshopped is chomping into raw liver like it's candy. And no, this ain't a Hollywood stunt. That's how Brian Johnson, aka the Liver King, kicked off his wild empire. 1 minute he's just some unknown dude. The next he's a millionaire living off the hype of raw meat, primal living, and that hardcore alpha male energy. He branded himself as the face of ancestral life. No processed food, no modern meds, just sun, steak, and suffering. To his millions of followers, he was living proof. Ditch the soft life and go full beast mode, and you'll unlock some kind of primal superpower. No shortcuts, no synthetics, just pure, savage hustle. Or so he claimed. But behind that shredded physique and caveman act, a pharmacy bill that hit $11,000 a month. Yup, turns out the so-called natural icon was juiced to the gills with steroids and hormones. The whole raw liver fantasy built on lies. And get this, he didn't even show up on the scene until late 2021. Out of nowhere, this dude with no shirt, giant beard, and a body like an ancient statue shows up online eating raw organs like it's some 5-star meal.
Listen, people are hurting. They're living a life of hate, hurt, suffering, struggle. Their life sucks. There's a better life to live if we model, teach, and preach this ancestral way.
Beef liver, raw meat, even bull testicles. He devoured it all like he was dining at a primal Michelin restaurant. And just like that, the video exploded. Over 10 million views, thousands of comments flooding in, and most importantly, belief. People weren't just watching out of curiosity anymore. They bought in hard. Brian didn't just call himself the Liver King, he became it. But this wasn't just about eating raw liver. He was selling a full-blown lifestyle, and he gave it a name, the ancestral way. It sounded wild at first, sure, but the way he spoke, the passion in his voice, it hooked people. Raw meat for breakfast, sunlight as your morning medicine, sleeping on hard stone like a caveman, and workouts that look like ancient punishment rituals. It was all wrapped up in these 9 ancestral tenets that started to sound more like a religion than a routine. He had folks convinced this was the path to real strength, real masculinity, real power. But what looked like raw, primal perfection, it was a little too polished, too good to be real. And that's where the cracks started. Because underneath all the liver and alpha talk, his whole empire stood on one giant lie. Back then, people were tired of recycled advice, fake promises, and those cookie-cutter fitness influencers. That's why they ran to the Liver King, not just for diet tips, but for a raw belief that you could still build a powerful, ripped body if you ditched modern life and went full primal. He sold more than just meat. He sold a dream, a return to something real, something authentic. For a generation drowning in self-doubt, battling weight gain, scrolling through perfect bodies online, Liver King became their battle cry. A savage role model who didn't care about filters or likes, just meat, pain, and discipline.
Which is usually tough because of the consistency. Right? Then you have heart, which is really delicious and mild, but you have elastin in there and a lot of collagen. You get that connective tissue. It's like gum, you're gonna be chewing that all day. And you probably know that this one is testicle, like you said, really mild, almost like a scallop or something. And then this is the king. This is liver right here. This was filtering blood just this morning, so it's actually really fresh.
For these folks, this wasn't some gimmick, it was a movement. Liver King stood as the muscle-bound middle finger to processed food, comfy gyms, and synthetic everything. He threw out the whey shakes and brought in raw bull testicles like it was ancient gold. And the wildest part, people actually followed him. They changed their routines, tossed their supplements, and chased after that primal lifestyle, all because of this beast eating raw organs like it was nothing. Then came the next step, money. He launched Ancestral Supplements, a name that sounded like it came straight out of a cave painting. With that, the brand was official. These weren't just supplements. They were capsules packed with liver, heart, kidney, and bone marrow, hyped up as pure ancestral power. Each pill was sold like it held a chunk of wild history, like swallowing one could awaken the savage DNA buried deep inside you. But let's be real, it wasn't the ingredients that made them fly off shelves. It was him, that insane body, the ripped chest, the granite abs, the raw muscle stacked on muscle. That was the sales pitch. Because if this dude built a beastly body naturally, then dropping $65 on a bottle of freeze-dried organs? That felt like reclaiming a lost bloodline. People didn't just want supplements, they wanted to look like him, to live like him. And the cash came pouring in, fast. Sales shot through the roof, over $100 million a year. His followers, they weren't just fans anymore. It turned into a full-blown tribe. A shredded, shirtless congregation hanging on every word he grunted out like gospel. I'll admit it, even I started wondering if maybe he really had uncovered something we all forgot in our soft screen-lit lives. But have you ever noticed, the moment someone starts climbing too high, fans aren't the only thing that show up. The scrutiny comes fast. I mean, I couldn't stop staring at his body, not out of admiration, but with a serious side eye. Like, how does a 45-year-old man keep a body like that?
You were on steroids. I was talking to one of your guys, and I was like, yeah, he's on steroids, right? Like, people don't look like that. He was like, no, he's not. And I think I'd heard Rogan say you were on steroids.
And he was telling people that the way he gets that way is by sunning his balls.
We're talking shredded abs, boulder-sized arms, skin glowing like he just stepped out of a spa, and all of it supposedly from raw liver, sunbathing, and sleeping on stone floors? Really? That's the recipe. At first, I tried to brush it off. Part of me wanted to believe it was all legit, that you could skip the steroids, skip the science, and still come out looking like a living action figure. But it wasn't just me raising eyebrows. Others started questioning it too. Then Joe Rogan dropped a line on his podcast, and boom, everything started shifting. He didn't mock. He didn't go full attack mode. Joe Rogan's words didn't just stir the pot, they hit like a rock tossed into still water. And let's be honest, when he talks, the whole world stops scrolling and starts listening. Rogan's got that reputation. He sat down with fighters, doctors, scientists, you name it. The man's been around, and he's got a sixth sense for spotting lies. Right after that, someone else stepped into the spotlight. Derek from More Plates, More Dates. If Joe lit the match, Derek brought the flamethrower. Now, Derek wasn't yelling or throwing shade. He didn't need drama. He brought cold, hard receipts. The guy did what he's known for, pulling out the microscope and breaking everything way down. Frame by frame, post by post, he dissected the Liver King's look like a forensic expert at a crime scene. He zoomed in on the red flags, ballooned up shoulders, veins that looked drawn on, chest muscles with cuts too clean to be natural, that paper-thin skin, plastic-like and shiny. Anyone who knows anything about steroids could see it clear as day. And then Derek dropped the question. It wasn't even directed at Brian. It was for everyone who ever believed the dream. You really think this body came from raw liver and sunshine? That one question, it cracked the surface. And once the glass started breaking, it didn't stop. Suddenly, what was once blind belief turned into non-stop investigation. People were talking. Doctors began chiming in. YouTube exploded with breakdowns of Liver King's body, his veins, his muscles. Every inch of him became a case study. And yet, at that point, it was still all just whispers, speculation, hunches. Everyone felt something was off, but no one had the smoking gun until the silence broke. Derek came back, and this time he wasn't playing detective. He was the judge dropping the verdict. A leaked email surfaced, and there it was. Brian Johnson's signature, plain as day. In that email, a full, painstakingly detailed breakdown of every hormone he was taking. Testosterone omnitrope, a type of growth hormone.
Because I lied, and I misled a lot of people. I've stated that this is a complicated as topic, at least to me it is, because before social media, I was rich and anonymous, and after social media, I'm still rich.
Decca Winstrol. The man had a full pharmaceutical menu, all managed under the eye of a hormone doctor. And the cost, $11,000 every single month. There was no wiggle room left, no more ancestral tenets, no more pretending the sun and steak did all the work. The guy who screamed 100% natural at every chance, he was stitched together by needles and vials. The internet erupted, social media timelines turned into battlegrounds. What started as a few skeptical voices grew into a digital riot. Comment sections flipped, fans felt betrayed, and expose videos popped up everywhere like wildfire. And then, the final blow, a confession video. Brian Johnson, sitting quietly on a big leather chair that looked more like a throne, wasn't the same man anymore. No raw meat. But here's the thing, he didn't deny the steroid use, and he sure didn't apologize. Instead, he flipped the script. He twisted the whole thing from a personal lie into some kind of mission to help others. Suddenly, it wasn't about him misleading millions. It was about us needing to learn something from his mistakes. Classic influencer move, the polished confession that feels more like a strategy than remorse. Liver King became the perfect case study in today's viral playbook, where public slip-ups are recast as noble sacrifices, where lies get washed clean with fake vulnerability and a carefully scripted monologue. He wasn't the first to pull this, but the way he did it, cold, calculated, almost emotionless. It felt shameless. The message shifted fast, from "I fooled you" to "I hurt myself to protect you." Suddenly, he wasn't the liar, he was the martyr, not the manipulator, but a so-called victim of his own mission. And after that limp, half-baked confession, I really thought he'd lay low, maybe disappear from the spotlight, go silent for a while. But nah, he did the opposite. Once his idol status collapsed, it was like Liver King didn't know who he was anymore. The raw meat, the muscles, the myth, it all crumbled. And what came next? Total chaos. Picture this, a shirtless man in a luxury hotel room wearing a fox fur hat, gripping two gold-plated AR-15s. No joke. It was like watching a primal meltdown in real time. His face was tight, tense like a drawn bowstring. But his eyes, they weren't fierce anymore. They looked lost, frantic, like he was searching for something that wasn't there. And then it happened. He stared dead into the camera and declared war. But this wasn't the roar of a confident alpha. This was something else. Something cracked. That fire in his eyes, gone, replaced with wild panic. His jaw was clenched so tight it looked like he was holding on for dear life, like the entire Liver King persona was slipping through his fingers and he couldn't stop it. What showed on his face wasn't power. It was a storm of emotions he couldn't even name. Rage, panic, confusion, and a deep fear that looked like it was eating him alive. He wasn't the Liver King anymore, just a man caught in the wreckage of a role he created and couldn't escape. That raw, primal icon he spent years building, it had become his cage. And watching him unravel like that made me wonder, and maybe you too, was this a man in pain? Or was it the cost of living inside a lie for too long? He built his kingdom on worship, flexed through admiration, and masked it all in a fantasy. But when the mask cracked, what was left was something hard to even look at. Then, boom, less than 24 hours later, the internet lit up with wild, unverified rumors. Posts claimed Brian Johnson had been spotted in full meltdown mode at the Four Seasons Hotel in Austin. Some said he was wearing an ankle monitor. Others swore he was being forced into a psychological evaluation within 7 days. There were even claims he got hit with a restriction order, allegedly banned from getting within 200 meters of Joe Rogan. No official documents, no confirmations, just whispers spreading like wildfire. After all those wild spiraling videos, one question started bouncing around everywhere, not just in my head, but all over YouTube breakdowns, Reddit threads, and every fitness forum out there. Why would someone at the top crash this hard? And on purpose. Liver King had it all. Over 1 million followers hanging on every word. A supplement empire pulling in hundreds of millions. A loyal tribe that didn't just support him, they worshipped him. They called him the ancestral leader and lived by every insane tenet he threw their way. Eat raw liver? Done. Sleep on stone floors? Say less. The man had a digital cult. But what fell first wasn't his money or his fame, it was trust. That sacred, invisible bond between the leader and the believers. Once that shattered, everything else followed. People who once copied his every move started bailing. Some felt betrayed, others tried so hard to defend him until they couldn't anymore. They were stuck fighting their own logic, trying to justify a lie they didn't want to admit they fell for. Then, the real consequences hit. People started returning his products. A massive $25 million class action lawsuit landed. Yeah, it got dismissed, but the damage, permanent. The brand was tainted. Distribution deals were yanked. Inventory sat untouched, stacking up like the crumbling bones of his empire. And the fallout didn't stop there. Liver King didn't just lose followers. Brian Johnson, the man behind the madness, was iced out completely. No more invites to podcasts. No more conferences. No interviews. Just silence. He didn't fade out like some trend. He got erased. 1 minute, he was the internet's primal icon. The next, he became the warning label on every influencer crash and burn story out there. A charlatan, a modern-day pretender dressed in raw meat and ego. Liver King wasn't just a man selling supplements. He became a symbol of everything wrong with influencer culture. Let this be the warning shot to the next wave of clout chasers. Don't build your empire on lies. Because once the spotlight shifts, once the wind picks up and the cracks start showing, it all crumbles fast. And when that mask finally slips, you might not even recognize the face underneath. At first glance, the fall of Liver King looks like just another influencer scandal. One more name swallowed by the algorithm. But take a step back, zoom out from the chaos, and you'll see it for what it really was. A tragedy of our time. A moment where we watched the world worship an image more than character, where aesthetics mattered more than honesty, where people bought into a dream because it looked strong, even if it was hollow inside. Brian Johnson didn't just tell a lie, he became it. And once it consumed him, there was no exit. When truth came knocking, he didn't open the door with humility. He doubled down. He gave us explanations instead of apologies, performances instead of accountability. And now the final question lands on all of us. In a world obsessed with image, when will we have the guts to just be real? If you made it this far, sound off in the comments. What do you think was Liver King's biggest mistake? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want more deep dives like this.